Look at this man. Have you seen his face? Who is this guy? My friends, this man is no other than Yevgeny Prigozhin, one of the most powerful men in Russia right now after Vladimir Putin. He is the creator, the founder of the infamous Wagner private military company, and he is known as Putin's chef. That is not just a nickname, he actually was his chef at one point of the time. He owned restaurants in St. Petersburg where Putin used to go, and this is how they got to become friends. And now, this is the only man in Russia who is officially allowed to criticize Putin's moves in Ukraine. How do you get such power, and how are you not flying out of the window after criticizing Putin? This is the power Yevgeny Prigozhin has right now in Russia, and today we're gonna look into his life, and it's a juicy one, I promise you that. My name is Artur Rehi. I'll be bringing you news from Ukraine, news from Iran, news from China. So if you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel and become a patron. Link is in the description below. Who is Yevgeny Prigozhin? A businessman? Chef? Hot dog seller? Yes, at one point in his life he sold hot dogs. I mean, the life this dude had, you wouldn't believe. Prigozhin was born on June the 1st, summer child in 1961. It didn't take long for him to get in trouble with the law, because in 1981 he was already convicted of robbery and fraud. In 1981 he was sentenced to 13 years in prison, and he served up until the ending of the Soviet Union, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union he was released, so he didn't serve the full 13 years, but you could say he served his fair share of prison time. So from that point on, the man has deep connections with the Russian criminal underground. He was established as a criminal in Russia at that point. He went into the free capitalist Russia as a criminal. What does our man Prigozhin do in 1991 when he gets out of prison? He wants to get his life back in order. He wants to change his criminal ways to legal ways of making money. After all, this is free Russia under Boris Yeltsin. Everything is possible. He has a great idea. He started selling hot dogs. He opened his hot dog stand. I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, props to him. He's really trying. He's really trying to change his life. As much as I know, PewDiePie sold hot dogs at one point, and it didn't stop him for having one of the most beautiful YouTube careers. But that wasn't quite it, and money came too slowly. He wanted something else. So sometime after opening his hot dog stand, he started a convenience store chain in St. Petersburg. It was one of the very first convenience store chains in Russia, period, after the fall of the Soviet Union. So Prigozhin, you can tell, was very creative and very innovative at the time. This also did not satisfy his appetite for money, so he opened a chain of fancy restaurants in St. Petersburg. Right now we have arrived in the year of 1996, and Prigozhin has his own chain of restaurants. Prominent figures from St. Petersburg and Moscow are visiting his restaurants. The man is doing good for an ex-convict in Russia. Maybe he can truly change his life, maybe he can turn everything around. In 1999, a little known dude from St. Petersburg called Vladimir Putin was to become the next Russian president, and in 2001 Vladimir Putin was searching for a restaurant place in St. Petersburg, and where else to go than one of these fancy Prigozhin's restaurants. So he went there, and voila, they met. Prigozhin, being an opportunist, struck good relations with Vladimir Putin, struck good relations with his bodyguards, with his entourage, everybody around Putin. They liked Prigozhin because he was good with words, he had charisma, he was one of those people, you know. Around that time Prigozhin started his own catering service. I don't know how it has any connections, but he immediately struck these huge multi-billion USD worth of deals for feeding the entire school system of Russia, feeding the school children, feeding the presidential office of Russia. If there was any official event with the politicians involved, it was Prigozhin's catering who fed the entire lot of them. He made some pretty good coin back then. He got insanely good deals from the Kremlin because of his friendship with Vladimir Putin. And being friends with Vladimir Putin, these government contracts are gonna rain down on you. Putin visited his restaurants more and more. Thus, he became the Putin chef. In the next few years, all of his government contracts combined had the worth of up to 3 billion USD. Only 15 years ago, he was in jail. Now he's feeding the entire Kremlin and putting 3 billion in his pocket. Talk about a nice career, man. At that time, Prigozhin started other companies. I mean, he's the head of like 10 different companies. He's that dude who starts businesses. You know, there are people like that. And most of these businesses are incredibly shady. We're talking about troll factories right now. He created his own media outlet, and under that media outlet there were entire troll factories who hire people. I mean, we have a report of one building hiring up to 400 people to work there daily, and their main job was to be what we know in the Western world as Russian troll. Just to go on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and comment bad things about the West, good things about Russia, building the narrative in the West. You wonder where that comes from? Well, Mr. Prigozhin here is behind that thing. He manufactured it. FBI has described these companies in their report as engaged in operations to interfere with elections and political processes. So if you think this guy is in Russia, he has no international reach. Way before the Ukrainian war started, this guy was already deep into United States elections and trying to change the outcome. According to the FBI report, the company did so in part by creating false US personas and operating social media pages discussing politics and social issues. It's basically Russian trolls. Prigozhin has denied his involvement in these companies and in the United States elections for years, almost a decade, but suddenly on November 7th, 2022, he just came out and admitted it. I guess he figured Russia is already sanctioned to the hell and I have no future in the Western world. I might as well come out with it because I'm not leaving Russia. I will now quote what he said on November 7th. "We have interfered, we are interfering, and we will continue to interfere carefully, accurately, surgically, and in our own way as we know how to do it." He's talking about the United States elections and United States internal politics. Prigozhin described the meddling with the US internal politics as, "During the pinpoint operations, we will remove both kidneys and the liver at once." And this is a quote. This is the kind of man we're talking about here. Gonna remove kidneys and liver of the United States elections. Which one is the kidneys and which one is the liver? You tell me. Sometime around 2014, Prigozhin created the infamous Wagner private military company, and he has denied the existence of it and his ties to it up until very recently. In September 2022, he suddenly acknowledged that he was the creator and founder of the company, and he's the alpha and omega of the company after denying it for years. I will quote Prigozhin how he came out with this information. "I cleaned the old weapons myself. I sorted out the bulletproof vests myself and found the specialists who could help me with this. From that moment, on May the 1st, 2014, a group of patriots was born, which later came to be called the Wagner Battalion." These are his words. I mean, I don't know which patriots is he talking about, because Wagner right now is known to mobilize prisoners from Russia and force them to storm Ukrainian lines near Bakhmut, sacrificing themselves to draw out Ukrainian artillery positions so the Wagner group could fire on the Ukrainian artillery positions. I mean, I don't see the patriotism in this storyline, but the weird thing about Wagner is that it is not registered in Russia as a legal entity, so it is illegal. It is unlawful. According to Russian law, Wagner should not exist. But Russian military really depends right now on Wagner for some military successes on the front. They depend on something that should not exist, that exists illegally, and they really depend on them. Wagner is key to Russian invasion of Ukraine right now. The very first deployment of Wagner troops was into Crimea of 2014. Little green men, a lot of them from Wagner. If you remember seeing the clips of those little green men from the news in 2014, now you can tie this with Prigozhin, this dude over here. He's behind this also. This dude is everywhere, oh my god. Wagner has been also very active in Africa and Middle East, in the countries, for example, like Syria. Very much taking part in the Syrian civil war, supporting the regime of Bashar al-Assad. By now, Prigozhin has become one of the most trusted persons by Vladimir Putin. He has become a confidant of Putin. Putin values loyalty much more than anything else. And time will tell if Prigozhin is loyal, because his power is starting to rival Putin's power. Because Putin depends on him for military success, that gives Prigozhin a lot of power, over Putin. And it is his choice to use it or not to use it. But we know from the past, I mean, this man is an opportunist. So I'm not sure how much this loyalty will last. In the recent months, he is one of the only powerful Russian personas to vocalize his discontent about the invasion. I'm not saying he condemns the invasion. He is all for the invasion. He just thinks it is managed poorly. He has really discredited the Russian army and Shoigu, the Russian defense minister. He has described how they have failed with their tasks in Ukraine and Wagner is doing it so much better. Nobody can say that in Russia, except for him, because Putin needs him. Wagner is not just a group of ragtag soldiers with Kalashnikovs anymore. They have their own air defense, artillery, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, and soon to be perhaps even air force. Putin has given this guy everything. Everything he needs, he gets. Things have gone so far that one could say that if Putin is taken out of the picture, Prigozhin is in the list of possible successors, taking over everything, the Kremlin, the Russia. In Russia, it is the land of opportunists who are not afraid of violence and using violent means to get rid of their opponents. And Prigozhin has proved that he has this trait in him throughout history. He's an opportunist. He is not afraid to hurt his opponents, and he likes power. And the more powerful he gets, the more paranoid Putin might get. But Putin cannot do anything because he relies on Prigozhin on the battlefield to show some victories to the Russian people, because without them he would lose the support of the Russian people. Putin is walking on a very thin line, forced to give more power to Prigozhin, but he is creating a monster as we speak. This was my video on Prigozhin. If you like these kind of videos, they're a little bit different from my Ukrainian updates, and I'm pivoting a little bit to more researchy videos about different topics and people around the world connected to war and politics, international relations. So if you like this, please subscribe to the channel and become a Patreon. Link is in the description below. And until my next video, my friends, stay cool and bye bye.